Look, Katie, I promised your mother on her deathbed I'm responsible for you. You're a baby still. You don't understand these things. I mean, like when you stand here by the window waving outside.
I was waving at Louis.
Look, I can tell you things about Louis which you wouldn't wave to him no more.
Is this a play you've always wanted to do?
It was a play that I never imagined that I would do. I had never thought, you know, having come from a background primarily in the classical theater, where I thought, you know, that was actually sort of it was a by necessity choice for me. I felt like this was a place where there weren't many actors working in the classical theater, and so there were more opportunities. Huh. And initially, and I also liked the formality of language. I liked the rigor of it. And so Miller was sort of in that elusive world of American naturalism, and I had enough trouble with Russian naturalism, let alone American naturalism. So and everybody wanted to do it, so I didn't really think I would ever do it, have an opportunity to do it. And I was satisfied with that because there's so many great writers who sort of do the thing that I like to do more. And Gregory Mosher approached me with the play, and initially I thought this is just a ludicrous idea. But I'd like to meet with Greg because I'd like to know where he is and where he's been.
Yeah.
Because as you probably know, has been away from the theater for about 15 years.
Right.
And I met with him, and of course he's such a charismatic guy and an intelligent guy that by the end of our meeting he had convinced me to read the play.
I mean, did he have a point of view about it?
Absolutely nothing. He said all of those very flattering things that one says to actors when you want to get them to do a play. I said, well, why this play? Why now?
Right.
Which is kind of a stupid question about this play. Once I read it, I realized, of course. With great plays, the reason that I picked the plays that I picked to work on is not because they're more difficult. It's that I find them easier. If you can sit back, well, you have to have the security of good writing. If you have the security of good writing, you can rest. You can rest.
That's right, because you're resting on what's been built.
You rest in the arms of the author.
Right.
And when you're tired, they carry the play. This is the great thing about verse, where everybody thinks verse plays are more difficult. I actually find them kind of simple. You get on a rhythm, you get on a pulse, and the play will carry you to places where you had no idea you could go.
You told me once that when you take a part, you look on the characters that you choose as your peers. And I'm wondering if you thought Eddie Carbone was a peer.
I identify with Eddie's loneliness deeply. It's that thing about solitude in company. It's that thing that we all share, which is our private thoughts. And Miller here has used the example of an inappropriate thought, a thought that should never be spoken. The idea of an older man with a younger woman, the incest even. This is one of those private thoughts that we all have these thoughts, but we rarely share them. That's just the doorway to the private soul, the private person. That's a way of, I think that's a writer's trick of accessing that private place. Because the theater is one of the few places where we can collectively access that very private self, and we do it communally.
How do you go about, okay, you didn't want to do the play for a while, then you think, oh, okay, I'm going to take a chance, this is a great play. How do you judge it great for you to be, or is it just you want to explore those feelings, or do you have an idea for your character?
I don't. We've talked about this before. I often have ideas for my character, and literally 95% of the time they're wrong. It is because I want to explore something. It usually comes from a sort of a literary decision. I read that and I go, wow, that's very, very well written. I'd like to try to do that.
Right.
And then over the course of the thing, people decide whether or not you're perfect for it.
Right.
But it's not a thought that ever occurred to me. I mean, in terms of the question of solitude and the thing that perhaps I identify with or that moves me about the part is Alfieri says at the end about Eddie, he says that he allowed himself to be wholly known.
Right.
Which I think is something that we're all after, allowing that. It's impossible, and yet at the same time we all want that private persona to be known and accepted. And most of us won't allow it to show. Most of us don't have the courage or the madness to let it out. And because the truth is that once we let it out, people will accept it. It's, I think, why ultimately Eddie, I think, is a character you can empathize with.
What's the moment in the play that surprised you the most?
Humor. The first act humor. I was, we were rehearsing and I thought, you know, if I'm not wrong, he's going for laughs here. And it never occurred to me that he was going for laughs in that first act. And I decided to I tried one day lightening it up a little bit.
Well, give me a line.
Well, it could be read as there's a series of 3 lines about the way she's walking.
Eddie, it's a style now. I mean, if you see me walking down the street.
Listen, you've been giving me the willies the way you walk down the street. I mean it.
Why?
Now, Catherine, I don't want to be a pest, but I'm telling you, you're walking wavy.
I'm walking wavy?
Now, don't aggravate me, Katie. You're walking wavy. I don't like the looks they give you in the candy store. And with them new high heels on the sidewalk, clack, 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 the heads are turning like windmills.
And that, initially, I sort of thought about, initially I was playing that as kind of overbearing father, controlling father figure. And then one day I kind of stumbled on a little, trying to find the right word for wavy. And suddenly the thing lightened up. And I had never figured out, you know, Miller writes such specific, annoyingly sometimes, stage directions. And one of the things that he said early on is that Eddie smiles as he sees her, shy to be in her presence. And I had never figured out that shy thing or how to do that. And then I thought, in this section, if you just pulled back a little bit, or if you allowed the self-consciousness of what you were saying to enter the room, in that stuff about the way she walks, it actually became very funny, at least to me. And the guy searching for the right word to talk about his niece's hips as she walked down the street, and he chooses wavy. You're walking wavy. And that, suddenly the whole first, if you get that section right, it creates a whole new relationship with Beatrice and Catherine for that first scene, which I think is really essential, that you see Eddie in his functional state.
The chemistry seems, from the punter's point of view, terrific. And in the case of Scarlett Johansson, absolutely surprising, because one wouldn't have imagined that she was as resourceful on stage. It's unheard of. I don't think she's ever been on the stage before.
It's a terrific example of character. I think she has tremendous character as a person, tremendous composure and patience and courage. I remember that Scarlett and I were being interviewed by a sort of catty journalist, and the journalist said to her, you know, what happens if you get terrible reviews? And of course my hackles went up, and I thought, okay, just be quiet, Liev, and relax, and don't try to defend her right now, and see what she says. And Scarlett kind of looked off into the distance for a second and then said, well, I guess I'll be bummed out. But the thing I think I fear most is that they might not let me do it again. And I thought, there's nothing to worry about with this one. This one's an actor. This one wants to do this. She wants to be here. Yeah. And they know, for a Broadway debut, she doesn't pick the easiest of plays. I think the really fascinating part for me, though, was the whole Kazan-Marilyn connection.
Yeah, he introduced him to Miller.
That Kazan was screwing around with Marilyn before he introduced Arthur to her.
Right.
Arthur then meets her. Wow, yes, exactly. Arthur then meets her and becomes obsessed with her. And it ends his marriage.
Right.
That's interesting to me. And that's part of why I think Scarlett is so uniquely suited to this role. There's something about a child actor who comes of age in front of an audience, and the way in which Hollywood sexualizes them when they reach a certain age, if you know what I mean. It's like she's no longer a child. So it's almost like we have to over-promote the fact that she's a woman. In other words, to make the transition from child to woman, you over-sexualize the celebrity, the person. Also, Miller's paranoia, I suspect, or maybe this is just Eddie's paranoia, but Miller's paranoia and agita about how she was being sexualized and how every man was looking at her and how that must have driven him mad was, for me, is all over this play. Could you imagine being Arthur Miller and being with that woman? Once it's out in the open, it's a wonderful secret sexy fantasy when they're just having an affair. But then once his marriage is over and he has to embrace it and it's in the news and they're being photographed every day by thousands of paparazzi and he has to look at her picture in the paper, he has to look at her movie things, he has to watch her walk over that grate and have her skirt blow up. And as an intelligent man who's in the entertainment business, he knows what she's being promoted as. Right. And that's, in his mind, his woman, who is also a child, who wants to be an actress, who wants to grow into this. You know what I mean? And
Terrific.
I thought that was really compelling.